Welcome to Vinnie Politan Investigates. I'm Julia Janae, filling in for Vinnie Politan. The subject of our investigation is the case against the alleged matriarch murder for hire plot defendant Donna Adelson. Investigators say she's the mastermind behind the murder of her beloved former son-in-law, Florida law professor Dan Markel. Here's a look at the story. Law professor and devoted father of two, Dan Markel, was involved in a bitter custody battle with his ex-wife, Vinnie Adelson. Wendy wanted to move with the kids from Tallahassee, Florida, to South Florida to be closer to her parents, Donna and Harvey, and her brother, Charlie. And after Dan Markel was gunned down in his garage in 2014, that's exactly what she did. Investigators were able to track down the gunman, a Latin King gang member, Luis Rivera, and his friend, Sigfredo Garcia. But why did these men kill Dan Markel? Investigators say there was a connection. Sigfredo Garcia's longtime girlfriend, shot girl Catherine Magbanawa, had once dated Vinnie Adelson's brother, Charlie. After the murders, Catherine was collecting cash, checks, and gifts from Charlie's family. Authorities determined this was a murder for hire, orchestrated by Charlie Adelson. After wiretaps, undercover operations, and a murder trial, Charlie Adelson has joined Catherine Magbanawa, Sigfredo Garcia, and Luis Rivera behind bars. And now his mother, Donna Adelson, Dan's former mother-in-law, has been arrested and charged with orchestrating the murder plot. But where does Wendy now stand in this twisted family drama? Everything we've learned about Donna Adelson from people who have come forward about her is that she was a particularly overbearing mother, overseeing everything in her family, even Wendy's dating life, and dictating how her divorce to Dan Markel should play out. But would Donna really mastermind the murder of Dan Markel? The day Dan was shot, Wendy was interviewed quickly by Tallahassee detectives, and she was asked if anyone in her own family could be responsible.
Somebody tried to kill my ex-husband. They should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
Regardless of who it is.
I mean, it would be different if I thought it were my brother, but I don't think it was my family. Anyone outside my immediate family, that's a tough one. Okay. But I don't think my immediate family did this, so...
Okay.
What Wendy has to say is very important, and that gets us to our first question in our investigation. What will Wendy testify to at Donna's trial? Because this is going to be a different one. She's testified in her brother's trial, but now it's about her mother. Let's bring in our panel to discuss this. Joining us, TV News reporter who's covered the case extensively, Kendall Brandt, and former homicide prosecutor and co-host of Primetime Crime on YouTube, Jarrett Ferrantino, is with us as well. Thank you both for being here. Kendall, let me start with you. Vinnie Adelson testified to a lot when she was on the stand in prior trials. What do you think she's going to say about her mother?
So in prior trials, specifically, I covered extensively the trial of Charlie Adelson, Donna's son. And when she took the stand for that trial, she specifically talked about one big topic was a joke that Charlie made, or what she claims was a joke, that he bought her a new TV because it was cheaper than hiring a hitman for her divorce present, as a kind of a gesture to celebrate her divorce proceedings with Dan Markel. So that was something that was brought up on the stand during Charlie's trial. We'll see if that's a topic during this trial, considering that doesn't have much to do with Donna. However, we do know from Charlie's trial that Donna, like you said, was quite the overbearing mother that always had questions about her relationships. Charlie and Donna were recorded on a tapped phone call talking about Wendy's love life and how she was lucky that she's in the situation that she currently is in. So it seems like they very much, the two of them, had a hand in what was going on within Vinnie Adelson's love life. So that was also a topic.
Yeah, Attorney Ferrantino, Wendy couldn't talk a lot about her mother during her brother's trial. She did get into some key topics, but how much more extensive do you think her testimony is going to get now that her mother is the one sitting at the defense table?
Well, Julia, I think it's going to come down to how controlling was Donna of Wendy, of Charlie, and everyone in their orbit. What did Donna do? Typically, when things were looking bad for the family, she took control. I believe that Donna and her relationship with Wendy, there's going to be a lot of information that comes out about this controlling matriarch and how she would do anything to keep the family image strong and keep her grandchildren close with she and Harvey and Charlie in Miami and not in Tallahassee. That's what it's going to come down to. The motive and how desperate Donna was to bring those kids to Miami along with Wendy. That's where Wendy factors into this particular prosecution.
Yeah, it's a question of whether or not Wendy is going to be much more open about that desperation, if there was more than what she testified to before. Because when Wendy testified at her brother Charlie's murder trial, she did tell the jury that her mother was overbearing, but she couched it a bit. Take a listen.
Is your mom overprotective of you?
Yes.
All right. And is it fair to say she's, a little on the controlling side?
I don't think she's controlling, but she's definitely overprotective.
Did she ever try to micromanage your life?
Maybe, yeah.
Did she have an interest in who you were dating and who you weren't dating and who you should be dating when you were single?
I think she was usually disappointed that I wasn't dating more.
Okay. For example, isn't it true that she would not let you drive to and from Tallahassee to South Florida?
Well, I used to drive before I had the boys, but they were young, and she preferred to come with me and give me some extra support.
So what would that look like if you were going to take a trip to South Florida? Would they come up here and get you, or?
No, sometimes I would go myself with the kids, but I was breastfeeding both of them, so it usually looked like me breastfeeding a child while I entertained the other in the Okahumpka rest stop. So
okay.
it was a lot. It was helpful to have some backup.
Wasn't it true that around the time of the death they were still doing this practice where they would prefer to drive you to and from South Florida?
I mean, not every time, but sometimes.
Okay. And would your mom sometimes enlist your brother Charlie to convince you to do certain things in your personal life?
Can't really think of an example of that.
Well, dating Dave was a big one on some of the materials I had.
Yeah, people like Dave.
All right, and your mom really liked Dave?
Yeah, everyone liked Dave, but we were just friends.
Okay. Did she try? So she would try to get Charlie to convince you to date a certain person?
I don't think she was getting Charlie to convince me to date Dave. I think everyone liked Dave.
All right. And would she try to get Charlie to convince you to do certain things as far as your professional life? What jobs to take?
No, I don't think so.
Do that. Would she try to get Charlie to do certain things like advise you on investment decisions, whether or not you were going to buy a house, for example?
I don't think so. I don't remember that. Danny and I made that decision together.
Once you had left Dan and you were living separately, did you look into purchasing a home here in Tallahassee?
I did, yeah.
And did your brother Charlie convince you not to do that?
I don't remember him convincing me not to. The only reason why I didn't was because I was waiting on the money from Danny from the settlement, and he didn't pay it, so I couldn't afford the house.
And your mom didn't want you to buy the house, did she?
That's not true. My parents were looking to buy a house in Tallahassee as well.
Kendall, you were there at this trial for Wendy Adelson's testimony during her brother's murder trial. What did you pick up on about her demeanor? Because I feel like when we're watching her, if we didn't know the details, we wouldn't know that she's not just any witness. She is the sister of a defendant who's accused of killing her ex-husband.
Well, when Wendy was waiting to go into the courtroom, she was actually sitting on the bench right outside of the press room. And she was sitting with who we assume was legal counsel. And she seemed pretty on guard. She was sitting with her head down and seemed to be pretty defensive. Her attorney was actually kind of blocking the restroom area when she would go in to use the restroom so no one would follow her in there. So she seemed to be kind of in defense mode in a sense. Again, to your point, she was very firm that she doesn't think her family had anything to do with this murder. She called some of the prosecution's claims or questions about her mother's involvement with the murder of Dan Markel or her brother's involvement with the murder absolutely untrue. So she was pretty firm in the fact that she thought that her family had nothing to do with this. And making claims that a lot of the decisions that she made were her own. She also talked about, was questioned about a book that she had written where the main character seemed to parallel Wendi a lot. She moved to a small northern Florida town that she was miserable in, and her marriage was falling apart. That was also a topic of conversation. And it is interesting, Donna's attorneys have actually asked that that evidence not be entered into her trial.
And yeah, you're right. She has doubled down on initially, though, saying that her family was not involved or she had no clue. But at that trial, she said this was her first time knowing when her brother said, "Oh, I was blackmailed. That's how I got connected to this case." She seemed clueless about that. Jared, do you think she's going to keep up with the cluelessness about what's going on? I'm not saying it's an act. It may be true. But is anything going to change when she gets in the courtroom for her mother's trial versus how she has been pretty consistent in the other trials?
Ignorance is bliss, Julia, right? That's what they say. But I have to say this. Let's not forget the fact that Donna Adelson is a trained attorney and Dan was a law professor. These are not stupid people. They were very comfortable in the legal world. They're well educated. Wendi knows what she's doing on that stand. If you remember in Katie's first trial with Sigfredo, she was confused about what immunity meant and things in that nature, and she was playing coy in front of the jury. I believe she will be as ignorant of the facts as she needs to be to protect her mother. I believe she thinks, and I agree with her, the more she knows about her mother's involvement, the more she's pointing the finger potentially at herself, which is a double-edged sword with Wendi's testimony.
And we certainly expect her to take the stand because she is on the witness list again, like she was in all of those trials. And also, I have to point out, she got that immunity for whatever her testimony is. So that is the reason we keep seeing her. Jared and Kendall, stand by. You're staying with us because we are going to talk more about the change that we've noticed in Wendi and Donna's relationship.
My parents were supportive of me moving to South Florida.
Would you describe your parents as being over-involved in your personal business?
That glove won't fit OJ, and if you don't ask him to try it on, I will.
Why do an experiment for the first time in front of a jury? It was utter incompetence.
We believe the glove was his.
It was a setup.
They weren't fitting it.
That was O.J. Simpson's best acting.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Trial and Error. Why did O.J. win? A Court TV original series. New episode Sunday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
And were your parents very involved in trying to facilitate that relocation?
My parents were supportive of me moving to South Florida.
Would you describe your parents as being over-involved in your personal business?
As compared to other people's parents?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That was Donna Adelson testifying in a murder trial over the death of her ex-husband, Dan Markel. And she's being asked about her relationship with her mother, Donna Adelson. And as Donna awaits her own murder trial, many are wondering what role Wendi is going to play in the outcome. And we have a glimpse into what seems to be their deteriorating relationship. It's all from a jail call, multiple jail calls, but this one specifically, Donna is making to her son, Charlie, who's behind bars for conspiracy to commit this murder. And Donna's reading from text messages that she received from her daughter, Wendi. This is 9 years after the death of Dan Markel. And after she told Wendi that Charlie had been asking about her from behind bars and how she was doing and where she was. Here's a listen to Donna reading those texts.
My lawyer has advised me not to talk to my family or anyone else about this case. No, about the case, which is true. We've never done it. I followed his advice despite your disagreements with this guidance. Please do not text me about this case anymore. Not about the case, is it? Not what I said about her brother and that he wants, how are you, Wendi? How's my sister holding up? Yeah. If you have anything further to say about the case, please go through our lawyers. Right now, I have to be singularly focused on taking care of the boys during this difficult time.
All right, so you hear there what seems to be a problem with communication. This mother saying that she wants to get more information from her daughter, but her daughter doesn't seem to be interested, even though there's been this cloud of suspicion over the entire family for a decade. So that brings us to our next question in the investigation. How has Wendy and Donna's relationship changed over the years after the death of Dan Markel? Let's bring back in our panel. We have with us reporter Kendall Brandt, who has covered the Adelson case for years, and now joining us, psychotherapist and CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, Dr. Janie Lacey, is with us. Let me start with you, Dr. Lacey. We're talking about a strained relationship, potentially. That's what it seems like the signs are pointing to based on what we can see. But also this overbearing and controlling nature that Wendy has testified to. What's your assessment of this case?
Well, the assessment, Julie, would be looking at it before the murder and after the murder, right? So what we hear from the court documents and the interviews is that this family, and particularly I would describe them as having an enmeshed family system where there was no potential boundaries, where everyone was overly involved in each other's life, where Donna was heavily involved in Wendy's life is what it appears, and especially in her decision making. And what we'll also see when I think about how the prosecution has portrayed Donna as this potentially over involved and controlling in her daughter's life and her relationships. And then we look what happened after the murder of her ex-husband. All right, the pressure of this, and any pressure of these types of investigation, Julie, is going to have some level of changes because it's going to change the tension and the dynamics of the family, especially when we're thinking about all the subsequent charges against the different family members, especially where Wendy is taking care of the kids and not necessarily being charged as of right now. When we're listening to these phone calls, you know, it does suggest that the communication patterns have changed and with the careful monitoring of the discussion. So where there was this over-involvement before the murder, it sounds like potentially with whoever Wendy is getting advice from, her legal counsel, other that she's separating herself and taking some of her power back that potentially she didn't have before the charges of her mother.
It sounds like certainly they're having to manage what the communication is like, at least from Wendy's standpoint. And Kendall, that makes me wonder back to the murder trial where Charlie Adelson is on trial. Do you recall if his mother, Donna, was actually able to be there supporting him in the gallery or supporting her daughter, Wendy, who had to take the stand during that trial?
Neither Harvey or Donna were in the courtroom at all during this trial. We did hear that through those jail phone calls that they were watching parts of the trial virtually through either media or other avenues, but no, neither Donna or Harvey were in the courtroom. However, we did hear some of those tapped phone calls where Donna and Charlie were talking about Wendy specifically. And Donna even voiced to Charlie that sometimes Wendy doesn't like to talk to her about certain topics or doesn't really voluntarily give her information about specifically her dating life, because Donna tends to seem to ask a lot about that dating life, particularly someone she was dating named Dave. And again, mentioning that Wendy was lucky to be in the position that she was, and neither her or Charlie understood why she was single at this point. So again, that shows that Donna was very involved in her daughter's life and wanted a hand in the decisions that she was making. But as your previous guest mentioned, Wendy is an attorney. She is very smart. She has her own legal counsel, so that legal counsel is advising her to not talk about anything regarding the case, and she is very much following those rules and not talking about her brother or her relationship with him, as he is now behind bars and has been convicted for the murder of Dan Markel.
I think you mentioned this jail phone call, so let's listen to it. It's where Donna Adelson is on a phone call. She thought her son had hung up, but the phone was still recording. She's talking to friends who are in the room with her about places that don't have extradition to the U.S.
The other thing I don't understand that my daughter could help me with, but we've been looking it up over and over, if things change if there is extradition from Vietnam. Because we've looked at all the places. I mean, I could go to Korea and China, but there's no extradition. But we're looking for places where there's no extradition. Maybe she knows about. Maybe she can look up the extradition issue before we waste our time.
Is she going to tell on you that my parents are thinking of leaving the country?
My lawyer told us to do that.
Okay, but if you mention it to Wendy, is Wendy going to tell? No, I don't think.
You tell her beforehand, I need to tell you something as an attorney who doesn't talk and has nothing to do with the case. It just has to do with Mom and I and some decisions that we have to make.
Yeah,
I know you want to bring her up and show her where everything is. Because in a plane crash, no one's going to know where anything is or who belongs to what. So I would like her to come upstairs so she could see it. I don't think too much.
Dr. Lacey, it sounds there that Donna is pretty desperate to talk to Wendy. Donna's pretty well off. They have friends, they have connections, they have their own attorneys, but she wants her daughter to look up extradition countries for her. What does that say to you?
What that says to me is that previously Donna had probably had a lot of control and she knew how to connect with her daughter. So the very fact that we're hearing this desperation of her wanting to connect over these specific reasons, you know, what it would also tell me is that by her connecting with her, having this conversation, that whatever the dynamic was before, that as mom, as Donna was able to do with her daughter, is probably wanting to employ those same techniques, because that's when there's no connection, then there's a lot of unanswered questions. Donna potentially thinking, what is my daughter thinking? Or her, where she has a connection and she knows her daughter in a way that has some history to it. Her having that connection and wanting her to talk specifically about these things would give her a temperature check on where her daughter is at, which would probably give her some understanding of her next moves as far as her case and what she can rely on her daughter for and what she can't. Would be my guess.
We know that her team, meaning Donna's team, is deposing Wendy Adelson in advance of Donna's trial. So maybe there's more that they want to get from her that Donna simply hasn't been able to get anymore. Kendall Brandt and Dr. Janie Lacey, thank you so much for being with us. We have more ahead on VPI. The question is, will Charlie testify?
Pumpkin.care.
Welcome back to Vinnie Politan Investigates. It's one of those cases that we've been following for years. The hitman killing of a law professor and loving father, Dan Markel. His former brother-in-law is already in prison for life for his role in the cold-blooded killing. And now the Adelson family matriarch, Donna Adelson, is about to head to trial in June for being the mastermind behind the murder-for-hire plot. Here's the story. Charlie Adelson's sister, Wendy, was going through a bitter custody battle with her ex, a law professor, Dan Markel. She wanted her children to move with her to South Florida to be closer to her family. Charlie convinced his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Catherine McBanawa, to hire her ex, a man with Latin King gang member connections, Sigfredo Garcia, to murder Dan. Sigfredo, with the help of his Latin King gang member buddy, Luis Rivera, drove more than 400 miles from South Florida to Tallahassee to kill Dan in his own driveway. Charlie was convicted at trial, and so were Sigfredo and Catherine. Luis pleaded guilty and turned state's evidence. And now Wendy's mother, Donna Adelson, is gearing up for her own conspiracy trial. She's charged with being a part of this murder-for-hire plot that left her grandchildren without a father. Charlie Adelson was convicted back in 2023 of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and solicitation. During his trial, he took the stand in his own defense. Adelson told the jury he was being blackmailed by his ex-girlfriend, Catherine McBanawa, the first time that he had ever shared that publicly. He also talked about how he had told his mother about what was going on. Take a listen.
I was face-to-face with her, and she was more persistent in asking me, you know, what the heck's going on? Are you still dating her? And I'm like, no, we're definitely not dating anymore. She's like, well, why are you giving her $1,000 a month? This makes no sense.
What happened next?
I told my mom, you know, I wanted to tell somebody, because if I get killed, at least somebody will know where to look or what it could have been about. So I wanted my mom to know what happened, but I also didn't want her saying anything to anybody. So I told my mom, I said, listen, I'm going to tell you something. but I never want to talk about it again. I never want you to talk to me about it on the phone. Don't talk about it anywhere. And please, whatever you do, do not say anything to Dad. Do not say anything to Wendy. Do not try to make me go to the police, because I'm not going. You got to promise me all that, and then I'll tell you.
And what did you tell your mom?
I told her that the night of the 18th, I got extorted for $250,000.
After that trial, Charlie was convicted and Donna was arrested for conspiracy to commit murder. And for her trial, the state prosecution put Charlie Adelson on the witness list. But before trial was supposed to start in November of 2024, his attorneys blocked him being able to be cross-examined by his mother's attorney, and that delayed the trial. So that gets us to our next question in our investigation. Will Charlie even testify at his mother's trial? Let's bring back in our panel to talk about this case. Joining us is private investigator who worked for convicted hitman Luis Rivera. She's been a defense investigator for 30 years. Monica Jordan is with us, and also returning is former homicide prosecutor and co-host of Primetime Crime on YouTube, Jared Ferrantino, here as well. Jared, let me start with you. That was a pretty shocking moment when Charlie Adelson did not want to testify, and his new attorney said, you're not testifying if your attorney is the same as your mother's. But do you think that he's now going to have to testify in the trial? He's back on the state's witness list.
Well, they could put him on there, and then there's a question of whether or not he ends up on the stand. The big issue here is, Julia, the jury didn't buy his original story that he was being blackmailed. And this new jury in Donna's case is not likely to buy it either. The key in some of these investigations is follow the money. What Charlie did was gave himself and his mother an explanation as to why they were paying Katie in the days, months after the murder of Dan. He provided what he believed was a justification, and that's what he's going to try to do if he gets on that stand in Donna's case. They're not going to buy it. And even more compelling, when she tried to hop the plane to Vietnam. All of these things point to Donna's culpability and Charlie's involvement in Dan's murder.
The jury did not buy it, Monica, but do you think he's going to stick with that story? Do you think he's going to testify, first of all? And do you think he will stick with the exact same story that didn't work at his trial?
I don't think he'll testify. I don't think his legal team will let him. I think that would be really foolish on their part. He's under appeal for a life sentence, and if he says something different, it's just more ammunition against him in the future. So I don't see any lawyer representing him allowing him to testify. If he did testify, I don't know how he can give a different statement, because that was the explanation he gave. So how could he possibly give a different explanation for this money? You can't give one run at the jury of one story, and when it doesn't work, you get to do another one. They will impeach him. Georgia is a very seasoned prosecutor. She would impeach him all over the courtroom with his prior testimony.
Well, no, he's been subpoenaed by the state, and he's behind bars, so they transport him out. And also, they've deposed him, so they do want some information from him before Donna Adelson's trial. Let's take a listen, though, to some of the things that would really be problematic for Charlie Adelson when he testifies. First, we're going to talk about the joke that he made about his sister's television and hiring a hitman. This is Wendy talking to Tallahassee police right after her ex-husband, Dan Markel, was killed.
Would you ever ask someone to do something like this?
Not in a million years.
Okay. Do you think someone would do this for your benefit without asking you?
No.
What good does it serve?
I made my brother, the one, his name is Charlie, the one I'm really close to, he makes a lot of jokes in bad taste, and it was a joke he made. He bought the TV for me this morning that got broken, and then I was talking to him about whether it made sense to pay to fix it or whether I should get a new one, and it was always his joke that, like, he knew Danny treated me badly, and it was always his joke. He said, I looked into hiring a hitman, and it was cheaper to get you this TV, so instead I got you this TV. I mean, he would never.
Now, do you recall making a joke that buying her a TV was cheaper than hiring a hitman? Something to that effect.
Yeah, it was, want me to say what
Yeah, tell me what the joke was.
What happened was when I gave her the TV set as a divorce present, this is the stupidest thing I ever said in my life. And I said, you know, I was going to get you a Hitman, but the TV set was a lot cheaper, so I went with the TV set instead. And I said it as a complete joke, and it was stupid, but I do that a lot.
Did you make that joke to others?
Yes.
Did you make that joke many times throughout 2013 and 2014?
I made that joke when she was having problems and she was fighting and she was upset. I recycled the joke, and it was stupid.
Did you ever say that joke to Catherine Magbanua?
Yes, I did.
Just to be clear, did you ever look into hiring a hitman?
No, never.
Former prosecutor Jarrett Ferrantino, I was floored when I saw in the just documentation and things that we looked over in this case that Wendy Adelson so early offered that bit about the joke to police. Do you think there's anything that Charlie can do on the stand that could actually protect his mother? It may be him falling on the sword and ruining his appeal, to Monica's point.
Well, as Monica said, he'd be a fool to try to tell another story. He's subject to being impeached. But that joke, it's a bad joke. And there's a little truth in every joke. Who jokes like that? You know, it's one thing, and I've had cases where someone says, I'm going to kill someone, and then ultimately does it. That's called intent. It's almost like a Freudian slip. That's what's on his mind. His sister is facing a problem. He wants to eliminate that problem. And by the way, he did hire a hitman to kill his brother-in-law, and he's been convicted of it. So that joke will find its way back into the courtroom if he gets on that stand. And it is a bad joke, and it's a bad piece of evidence to confront Charlie with.
Monica, what else do we know about who Charlie ran with and his connection? We know he dated Catherine Magbanua, but what else did you learn in your investigation about him?
Well, regarding Charlie, Charlie wasn't on the radar that much initially when I was involved in the case. They were seeking the death penalty against Lewis, and because they had been here twice and based on the evidence they had put together with the rental car, Charlie wasn't that involved. You know, Lewis would only refer to him as the dentist. He didn't even really know Charlie's name. Lewis was more concerned with the fact that Katie had manipulated Sigfrido into this idiot plot, and all Lewis wanted to do was to rob the lady. So it wasn't until Katie got arrested. When Katie was arrested, I never thought she would last 2 weeks in that county jail. I thought this was it. This is going to be the conduit to finally make this all come full circle and expose Charlie Adelson. When Katie took it to trial, I just never in a million years thought she would have the bandwidth to hold out like that. But I mean, she had a lawyer that was being compensated. You know, Sigfrido had court-appointed counsel, and she took it all the way and was convicted. I mean, it took him 2 times to convict her, but she did get convicted.
Yeah, she took a gamble. The first trial was hung, and then she came back and told the same story of not being involved and was convicted, but then she changed her story in Charlie Adelson's trial. We do have to step aside for a break. Our thanks to Jarrett Ferrantino for being with us. Monica is staying with us because we are going to talk about this divorce and whether or not it could be a motive for murder.
I want you to answer the question. What was the most important part
of the divorce for my mom?
Yes.
It says here that for her it was relocation.
Prosecutors claim that the bitter divorce between Wendy Adelson and Dan Markel are what set into motion a murderous plot to kill. And using the contentious divorce and custody battle seems like a solid path to proving that Donna Adelson may have had some involvement. And for prosecutors to get a conviction, we know they have the burden to prove this case. And though they don't have to prove motive, divorce has certainly been one that has been put forth as a potential reason that Donna would have wanted her son-in-law, her ex-son-in-law, killed. Wendy wanted to move her 2 sons with her to South Florida, some 400 miles away from Dan. And while testifying during her brother's trial, Wendy was asked about the divorce and relocation attempts.
Your family had your ex-husband killed to try to help you, didn't they?
No, that's completely untrue.
And back to the divorce, the petition where Danny is responding to your petition for the motion to relocate. Are you familiar with that filing, or do you need to take a look at it? And he's very adamantly objecting to your relocation, right? On page 82, it says the sole stated reason the wife seeks to relocate is so that she can be closer to her parents. Was being near your parents the sole reason that you wanted to relocate?
No.
It wasn't the sole reason stated in your petition?
It wasn't the sole reason stated in my petition, and it wasn't the sole reason that he and I talked about before I filed the motion to relocate.
Why was he so adamant and so confident that this was the real reason you wanted to be down there?
I think there's a lot of things in these pleadings that are not true, so just because it says something doesn't make it true.
Now, Donna's defense is trying to get the divorce filings as a whole excluded from her upcoming trial. And here's a look at the recent defense motion and the language that they used. They said that the only significance that the undersigned can fathom is that the state desires to use the size of the divorce file, which is 560 pages, to support their false narrative that the divorce was a bitter custody battle. The defense goes on to argue that they're seeking admission of the divorce file. In the previous trials, the state has asserted that the statements contained in certain filings go to the motive of the defendant then on trial. Wherefore, defendant Donna Adelson respectfully requests that the Honorable Court grant the motion in limine and enter an order excluding or limiting the admission of this court file. This is a family court file, Adelson versus Markel, and they're also asking for other relief. So that brings us to our next question in our investigation. What was the divorce? Was the divorce rather a motive for murder in this case? And can the prosecution try and prove it in front of the jury? Let's bring back in our guests. We have private investigator Monica Jordan, and joining us, psychotherapist and CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, Dr. Janie Lacey. Dr. Lacey, let's start with you because I want to talk about the emotions that can be involved when going through what has been characterized as a bitter custody battle when it's someone's loved one who's going through that divorce. So it's not Donna's divorce, it's her daughter's.
Well, Julia, when we consider the family dynamics and the enmeshment and the over-involvement, then vicariously, then someone can take on as if they're the ones going through it. They can take on these things very personal. And when they're taking on things very personal, then that means all the feelings that can be associated when it comes to bitter divorce or contentious custody battle cases, whether that's, anger, there's frustration, there's hatred, and there's just a power dynamics because usually two parties want something that is very different. So if Wendy wanted to relocate and for having her reasons to relocate and her mother was invested in her relocating, then having Dan being successful in blocking that relocation through the legal means, then of course Donna can take it as a hit towards her. And if she's used to having a personality where she's used to getting what she wants, then in these types of cases, then it's going to be by all means necessary. So I would be interested to understand Donna's personality even before all this case had happened, because that can set her up for what we potentially are seeing and playing out in the court dynamic as we're watching right now, Julia.
Monica Jordan, you did some private investigating in this case, and I do want to highlight the grandmother's motion. That's what the prosecution has characterized in that divorce filing, one where Dan Markel was filing a petition with the court to limit Donna Adelson's access by herself with her grandchildren. And he referenced that she was making negative comments about him in front of his boys, so he wanted her to be supervised anytime he was not with the boys and she was around them. Can you talk about that motion if you can, but also what you learned during your work with Luis Rivera's team in terms of what they understood was the reason behind the hiring of a hitman?
Well, regarding Luis Rivera, they thought that there was to take the kids from the father, and that's what upset Luis, because, you know, Luis is a lot of things, but he is also a father. So he found that to be very off-putting. The reason why I think they're filing this motion to exclude the divorce documents and some of the filings is because that is the motive. And if they can get that cut out of this next trial for Donna or excluded, then it cuts down on Georgia talking and cross-examining these witnesses and doing direct examination of these witnesses about the divorce. I mean, there's a lot of bad things in that filing that talks about the mother. So if you can keep that from coming in, then it cuts that portion of it away from it.
And Dr. Lacey, I'm wondering if jurors, any who may not have any connection to this case, haven't seen anything about the case, if they will struggle with the fact that this is something that happens every day in terms of a divorce, in terms of a custody battle. Lots of people know people who've gone through it. They may have gone through it themselves, and it doesn't turn to murder, especially a case like this where there's no allegation that Dan Markel was abusing the kids, abusing his wife. Wendy never even said that he did anything more than perhaps was verbally not nice to her and spoke down to her. But do you think they'll struggle to make the connection that Donna would go to these lengths over a custody battle?
I think, like you said, it's very rare where things can turn very violent, where someone loses their life. But if we look at the other pieces of this case, it's very common of this power struggle and this dynamic, the over-involvement of family members. So I would imagine the jury members, either themselves, perhaps it can bring up some, even parts of something that they can relate to, or maybe it's someone that they know, because these are very common stories in the sense of the contentious battle and to two people who deeply loved each other but now are acting potentially like they don't even like each other, having over-involvement family members trying to manipulate certain types of things to get what they want. So when we look at the different dynamics and different pieces of the case, I would imagine that the jury will find pieces of it that they all can relate to, or potentially someone that they know that can relate to, especially going through contentious custody battles or just nasty divorces in general. But it's very rare that most people have a story or can relate to someone that has it ended up in violence or losing of someone's life over these issues, even though it does happen.
Dr. Janie Lacey and Monica Jordan, thank you for your time in breaking down this case for us. Dan Markel was executed because he loved his kids too much and didn't want to be without them. No custody battle, no divorce should be deadly. And though it's been a decade, it's taken a decade and counting now to address all of those who were involved in his murder, it's a testament to his relentless family, investigators, and prosecutors. Thank you for being with us. For Vinnie Politan Investigates, I'm Julia Janae filling in for Vinnie. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.